Okay, Mark Guerrero here. I'm about to interview Anthony Baray, leader of the Emeralds in the 60s and early 70s in East Los Angeles. We're going to talk about the East LA music scene, sometimes known as the East Side Sound, and our memories because we're from that era. We're geezers from that era. How did the Emeralds start? Were you already a musician playing guitar? What was going on?
Well, I think I was about 14, uh, and it started in a real funny way, actually. Like I never thought I was going to be in a band, but I liked music. I wanted to be a musician, definitely, because I was like on fire about music since I was. Do you remember when like you were in elementary school, they would take you to these field trips, like to the, the Shrine Auditorium or something like that, and you'd see like music or
Yeah,
whatever.
orchestras.
Yeah. So that's, I guess I was in grammar school, sometime in grammar school, and we went to the Shrine Auditorium and heard like Mozart and Beethoven and Brahms in a concert, and I was like blown away. It was like I couldn't believe it. Like I can't even express it now. Like, I was like listening to that and I was thinking that sound is coming out of those people out down there. Like, it was like
Wow.
I was just like blown away. And
Now
so,
at that point you had heard probably rock bands and stuff, but it didn't strike you in quite the same way.
yeah, nothing's ever struck me like that. Like hearing that orchestra playing, and it just seemed like, how could that sound be coming out of those people? It was just like amazing.
And
So
interesting how later on you got very interested in classical music.
yeah, I, yeah, right, exactly. Because it just kind of got set aside. But I just thought about music. I just loved music, and so years went by, and then I got into junior high school. So that's where in junior high school I got in the band at junior high school under this really serious guy named Joel Lish. He was like a violinist, a real serious musician. And so he was there, but he was at the end of his time at Stevenson Junior High School. And then they got another teacher, a black guy that was named Mr. Young, and he was a bass player, and he was like the opposite. He was like a super cool bass player, and he was like the head of the orchestra now. So, a couple of semesters in there, and then I think it was. I'm not sure what grade I was in, uh, but anyway, he wanted to he wanted to get some musicians to back up a girl singer that he liked, that was in school there, and so. One of the guys that I knew, Jesse Perez, he was uh, the other singer was me and him were the singers in the Emeralds, and this is before the Emeralds. But he lived on the next block from me. On like I lived on Bonnie Beach, and then on the next street over, Record Avenue, was where Jesse lived. So I already knew him from my childhood already. So he asked me, and then I was playing sax in the band. I played alto sax in the school orchestra. So uh, he asked me, would you want to, I need a sax player, so would you want to play in a band we're putting together? And I go, oh yeah, great. So I could see that like Jesse like knew I played guitar already because I started when I was like 11, and I already played guitar, but I could see like Jesse really knew way more than I did. So I thought, wow, I could really like learn guitar from him. And so I told him, you know, I'd rather play guitar actually. Maybe I could just play guitar. And he thought like, yeah, all right, okay. So started with me and him, and then he got some other guys. He asked some other guys, which was my neighbor, my best friend in those days when I was a young kid, Jacob Padilla. So he I don't think he had a bass, but he knew how to play guitar. We used to like play because we were neighbors where we could stick our hands out of our houses and shake hands. Like He was like really my next door neighbor. And so we had got Jacob to play the bass, and then I guess I think Mr. Young, the band director, asked Fred Gonzalez, the drummer, I guess, or maybe Jesse knew him. I don't know how Fred got in exactly. And then we got and then we got a rhythm guitar player, Ray Rosa. And so we were going to play in the talent show at Stevenson Junior High School. So we rehearsed and we were all excited to play at the talent show. And we didn't have a name, and we didn't have any. We never had a name at Stevenson, but they used the backdrop from some kind of like a play or something that they had there that said the Stevenson Bobcats in the back there. So everybody started calling us that. And I kept telling everybody, no, it's not our name. We don't want that name, like, so we didn't have a name, but I mean, probably the people that went to that show there, we were the Stevenson Bobcats.
That's funny. Those are a lot of the original Emeralds, because I recognize them.
Yeah, that's like the core of it, right there, And so what a serious thing happened is that on the day that we were going to do the talent show, there was this man, Mr. Hunter. I forgot what he taught a math teacher there or something. And he was like a kind of a photographer or amateur or just like a serious photographer. So he took our picture before we were going to play, before the talent show was going to start. He said, "Here, come over here get on the stage, and I'm going to take your picture." This was like around sometime in the afternoon, and which I realized later was like somewhere after lunch, like about 1 o'clock or something. And then we were going to start the show, and then they came in and said that the show's canceled. They shot the president.
Oh, November 22nd, 1963.
Yeah. And so everybody was just like stunned, like it was like it was just like you see in a movie or something, like all the teachers were crying and everybody was all just delirious, And so we didn't play the show, and then so I think we did it the next week or a couple of weeks after that, and then they finally had the show.
Interestingly enough, this is my book. I've never heard this story before. I've known you forever and didn't know this actual beginning of the Emerald story. But isn't it funny how our lives were so parallel? Because you were at Stevenson, I was at Griffith, and you were playing sax in the band. I was playing clarinet in the band, which was not quite as hip. I was a clarinet player, But also, we both played guitar before the Beatles. A lot of guys you hear interviewed, they say, "I saw the Beatles and Ed Sullivan. I bought a guitar." We were already in bands before the Beatles came out.
Yeah, we already knew how to play the guitar. Start.
Yeah. And I know our band, the Escorts, we started out with surf tunes. Did you do surf tunes in your early days?
We played Wipeout at that talent show.
We used to do that too. The big number.
Yeah.
Amazing parallels. Yeah, incredible. So how did the name Emeralds come about?
Well, after the talent show, we just kind of like went our separate ways for a little while, like, weeks or months. I don't know what it was. And then we said, "Hey, let's get together again and play some songs. You want to do that?" So then we started to get together at the drummer's house, Fred Gonzalez. He lived over there kind of near like where, in the area where Sears is, the big Sears over by the river, in that area. So that's where we would go. It was like far away from where I live, but we would just drive over there. So we started like playing. We started playing and thinking, hey, we should stay together and play somewhere. Like, hey, we could be a real band, like that.
Did you already have Fred as a drummer? Who was a drummer?
Yeah, he was. He played in the talent show. Like the drummer, the rhythm guitar, me, Jesse,
Jacob.
That was the beginning Emeralds lineup, and then we got a couple of horns. We didn't have them yet. We were still. That was the Emeralds at the beginning, basically.
How did you switch to guitar from sax?
I told Jesse, "How about if I just play guitar?" because I could see that he showed me like the blues changes. I didn't even know those. I didn't even, he goes, yeah, and he turned me on to that Freddie King, Let's Hide Away.
Oh, I had that too. I had that.
Man, I was like on fire about
What
that.
kind of guitar did you have?
I had two guitars that were kind of equal. I had the first guitar, electric guitar I had was a Gretsch. It's called like an anniversary something. It's like
Mhm.
a, like kind of like a jazz guitar in a way. That was in the days, remember when you could go down to Main Street and there was I mean, many pawn shops down there, and all there was literally millions of dollars of vintage gear down there, but nobody thought of it like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what my parents got me that anniversary guitar. It was like a light color, it's like two-tone, a really funny. In those days, like two-tone was like, like the cars were like two-tone and stuff. So this guitar was like a light green on the top, and then the sides were dark green. So it was like, to me it was like a corny guitar, but it was like I was happy I got it.
Did you have a Fender too?
Yeah, so I got a Jaguar.
I remember that Jaguar.
I went to go, but I wanted a Stratocaster. And so I was looking all over, calling there was nothing really much available in those days, like you couldn't go to so many different stores as it is now. So I called all of the stores that I could, and then I I just found some place that they said, well, just come down. So I just wanted to get a new guitar. I really did. So my mother took me down there because she had the checkbook, so I went with my mother to the place. I don't even remember how we got there, actually.
Was it Phillips?
No, it wasn't here. It was like really,
Oh,
I think, I think we went, this is what happened. We went somehow we got out to Wallach's Music City, and they used to sell instruments in
yeah.
there. So I went in there, and then when the Stratocaster was so much more money than the Jaguar that I got. Like I now when I see that, I wouldn't think that it would be like that, but it was like maybe $100 more or something. And in those days, I was like a lot of money, because that was like 63.
Was
So
your Jaguar also green, as I recall?
no, it was like
Color
a
was it?
sunburst.
Oh, okay.
That like beautiful sunburst, like like every in those factories, every different sunburst finish came out different, right? Even if the same guy did them.
Mhm.
So this was like real beautiful, and funny thing is, for the emeralds, my friend Jacob, his father was a painter, so he painted all of our guitars I'm getting ahead of the story here about the emeralds, but he painted all of our guitars metal flake green.
That's what I remember. That's why I thought it was green originally. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was the sunburst.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You still have that guitar?
No, I traded it for I traded those two guitars I told you about, plus a set of timbalas and a lot of money to get that Country Gentleman.
Oh, yeah. Because by then the Beatles were out, right? And George had that guitar.
Yeah. To back up, so just about the Emerald's name,
Mhm.
we just knew we had to pick a name, and in those days, all the names were like something about some kind of like gem, like
The
the
Royal
diamonds and
Gems.
the pearls and the rubies and the sapphires, and
Yeah.
so that's the only one that wasn't used at the time.
It was left over.
Yeah, and we went through it. Was like, for a long time, like a month, everybody would come with names and stuff, and then we were thinking, well, we should just pick something, and that's why we just said we should just find a gem name that's not used by anybody. So that's how that happened.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like flip a coin almost.
Yeah. So I was just going to say that because we mentioned Phillips music, that when we were teenagers in East LA in the 60s, there was Story Music on Whittier Boulevard that sold instruments and records.
I love
And then
that.
there was Phillips that sold instruments. And then, of
That
course,
was
there was,
the greatest.
yeah, I bought my Esquire there. Fender Esquire. But then there was, for records, then there was a Record Inn and the Record Rack on Whittier Boulevard. But for instruments, it was just those two later Padrini's came along, and Johnny Thompson's, and what's the other one? The keyboard player that played with Yaki was the son. Cronin.
Cronin.
Yeah. So we had more choices, but back in the early days, early to mid 60s, it was just Phillips and Story music, unless you went to, like you said, LA or Hollywood.
That's where I bought that Jaguar downtown. There was like a big, I forgot what it's like, Shearson's Brothers or something like that on Hill Street or something, you know. That was a weird place to go, but they had a big selection of Fender guitars there.
Yeah. So how did you start getting gigs, like serious gigs, and getting on the East Side circuit?
Well, I don't think of the first jobs that we did they were serious. So
Like a lot
They
of
were-
parties.
yeah, it was at parties. I know we played at only parties at first. This is a funny thing. I didn't ever think about this, but we were really connected into this big network of people through the drummer Fred Gonzalez, because his father owned a bakery in the neighborhood over there. So they knew a lot of people, and then Fred had Fred's girlfriend was really connected with so many people. So think through her family, she got us like just tons of parties to play at people's birthday parties or quinceañeras or weddings, or, So, I mean, all of those parties were like overflowing with people.
Mhm.
And later on, I realized that most of those people were her relatives.
Mhm.
I didn't know that at the time. I just thought, wow, these are big parties, that they have all the time. But her family was so huge that, if Fred played there, I think that's what really was the draw at the first parties that we played at. So
Mhm.
we had like too many parties to play.
That's great. Okay, so how did you make the leap then from the parties into starting to play the halls and the cool places?
I think that it just progressed like to, we're playing at parties only. And then some people said, oh, we like you guys. We want you to play at our wedding. So then they'd rent a hall and there would be better halls. And then that's like that word of mouth.
Yeah.
Basically, it was always that. And uh, yeah, that's what
And then then the promoters started to call you,
yeah.
like Sam Nevada and Paul Carlin and those kind of people? Did you
Yeah.
get those guys?
I think Paul Carlin, but we got, I don't know why we had, I never knew a lot of the people we got a manager.
Oh, so you didn't get the calls.
Yeah, we got a manager.
Oh,
And so, because um, I was like terrible about business stuff. Like I really did, in Emeralds, people would say, who's the leader of the Emeralds? And then I would tell them, well, Fred's the business leader and I'm the music leader, And so it was really that, because I thought, when I knew what the leader's job was, it was like boring to me. I was like,
and
oh,
what about, when did Mr. Ballesteros come in as your manager? A little bit later, after his son came in?
yeah, exactly.
Son Ray was a sax player,
Yeah,
right?
Ray. Uh-huh.
And then later Aaron is his other son.
Yeah. But, a long time after
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
he was the first sax player we got. A funny story about that was like the worst meeting for him, because he came over, and then in those days, like the drummers, they used to have their cymbals that could like be on a kind of this like chrome pole that would be on the bass drum, right? So Fred had some really large cymbals, and the manager was sitting right there. And then so I put my foot up on the bass drum. I was talking to him, so I barely met him, and I put my foot up on the bass drum, and it made that cymbal fall like that, and it hit him right in the face. And that must have really hurt, but he was so kind, he was going, oh, he goes, oh, it's all right, and like he was probably thinking, oh, wow, like.
Cursing under his breath.
So I thought, oh man, he's not going to be our manager. He's going to say, forget those guys. This guy almost killed me right now.
Decapitated him.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So that's how it was a bad start. But he was, he was a real nice man. And uh, I, 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 I owed him and his wife a lot. I mean, they really took care of the band.
I remember.
Yeah, they were great.
So I was looking on my website, markguerrero.com, on my flyers page that has a lot of flyers from the 60s in East LA. And I made a note of all the ones that I have, the flyers where our bands played together. So let me go over some of these. So the first one I have, and we probably played more than this, but these are the flyers that I have. The All Nations Hall. Remember that place?
Now it's a Social Security hall.
Was it on Soto or where was it?
Yeah, on Soto.
Okay. And then years later, we played together there, but that's another story. But All Nations Hall, December 19th, 1965. And here's the lineup. Little Ray and the Progressions. The Emeralds. Thee. The Dreamers. Do you remember the Dreamers? I vaguely remember them.
Kind of.
You do remember them?
Not really well, but
Yeah. And Mark and the Escorts. So there we were, the Emeralds and Mark and the Escorts playing together December 1965. So I'm not sure if I think we had met already, but I do remember that gig. I remember one song that we played that I really enjoyed. It was by the Turtles, and it was called "Your Ma Said You Cried," and it had 3-part harmony. It was like ba 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 ba. Your ma said you cried in your sleep last night. I remember that distinctly. And I remember seeing you guys and thinking you were really good. And I can't remember what song. You may have played 1, 2, 3 by Len Barry.
Oh, yeah.
1, 2, 3. I think you sang it. See, the memory is still there.
I found a tape of us singing that song.
Really?
It sounded really good, like the horns and everything.
Yeah, and you sounded like Len Barry.
Yeah,
I remember that. Do you have any other memories of that gig? Or?
The weird thing, I used to tell everybody this and it was true many, decades ago. In those days, my mind was just like, where's the stage and where are the electrical outlets? That's about what I remembered,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And plus,
I had like blinders on,
Plus, it's more than 50 years ago. It's like when Ernie and I talk, my old drummer and friend Ernie Hernandez, we talk about shows we did, and we go, "Do you remember that gig?" He'll remember the details about a certain gig, and I won't remember the gig at all. I don't remember being there. And then the opposite will happen. I'll have all these memories, and he has no. It's just somehow our minds selectively remember certain things.
I remember all the stuff related to anything that if we were going to play, like, oh, so-and-so, we had to borrow a chord from so-and-so, whatever, like that kind of stuff. But just the casual things I kind of didn't remember.
Yeah. Okay, here's the next one. The next one, the Big Union Hall on 49th Street, May 21st, 1966, headlining the Revingtons. Papa Mama, remember that?
Yeah.
The black group. They were headlining, and then Little Ray and the Progressions again. The Enchantments, that was Eddie Serrano was lead singer, and Bobby Brambilla was a guitar player. The Men from Sound, huh?
Wasn't Bobby Espinosa in that band?
I don't think so. He was in the Mickey and the Invaders, I remember, before the VIPs. Maybe, but I don't know. And then by then we changed our name. We were Mark and the Escorts from 63 to early 66. Then we changed our name to the Men from Sound. S period, O period, U period, N period, D period, and it stood for nothing. But we took the idea from the Man from U.N.C.L.E., the TV show.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then one of the guys in the band made up an acronym and said, Men from Sound, Syndicate of Unusual Naked Dudes. That wasn't really what it stood for. But anyway, we're the Men from Sound. And then the Emeralds and the VIPs. That's quite a lineup. The VIPs later became El Chicano, and that was Mickey Lesbron and Bobby Espinosa and Fred Sanchez. I was
impressed by those guys because they had a Vox organ.
Ooh, okay, that's another good
big
subject.
Time, right? That's another
good subject to talk about. I was going to mention the instruments of the early to mid 60s. Most bands at that time, if they had an organ, it was a farfisa, which was pretty cool, but it wasn't as cool as a Vox organ. The Vox organ seemed more English. The Animals had a Vox organ. The Beatles played a Vox organ.
Right.
So when an East LA band got a Vox organ, that was big time. Remember the Midnighters had one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said the VIPs had one?
Mhm.
So that's quite a lineup. VIPs, Emeralds, Men from Sound, Enchantments, Little Ray and the Progressions, and the Rivingtons. Okay. And the Big Union Hall, huge hall downtown, the city of Vernon. And remember, it had that long ass skinny stage, right? Do you remember that stage?
I heard about it, and I was like,
Did you ever play? Well, you did play there this day.
like I was looking forward to playing it and everything, but then it sounded terrible.
Well, because it was such a big room.
Yeah, it was like so live and wet, like the
Yeah.
sound of it.
Yeah.
It just sounded like a big mishmash of stuff.
Right.
So I was like totally disappointed when we played.
Right, but the stage wasn't just a regular stage. It
No,
ran from one side of the room to the other, so you could actually set up 3 or 4 bands on it if you wanted to. But usually there was just one band set up in the middle at a time. But it was a really long, narrow stage. We played there quite a bit, and my biggest, fondest memory is we got to back up Dobie Gray, who had a big hit
Oh
with
yeah,
I'm
right.
in with the in
Yeah,
crowd.
that's a cool
And then a
song.
couple of years later, he had Drift Away, which became a classic. But anyway, he came to our rehearsal at our house and rehearsed with us during the day. And we were just these 15, 16-year-old kids. And he was a man and a star. And he came over and rehearsed with us, and we played with him. And we have photographs of it. And one of the songs I remember him doing is Hitchhike by Marvin Gaye.
Yeah.
And of course, we did the In Crowd. Anyway, so that was another gig. Now, the next one I have is the Kennedy Hall, and December 9th, 1966, which is later that same year, the Big Union gig. And the Kennedy Hall was on Atlantic Boulevard, across the street from St. Alphonsus Church and Auditorium. And it was named after Kennedy got killed. They named the hall the Kennedy Hall. And this lineup was the VIPs again, the Apollos, who were kind of a new band at that time. I remember they had like a bunch of 8 guys or 10 guys, and they were good. And I remember them. We did a few gigs with them, the Apollos. The Teen Turbans. Do you remember the Teen Turbans?
I remember that.
You do? Did they wear turbans?
I don't think so.
That's
We
another
were the ones
story.
they were, yeah, we were
That's
the ones
another
that
story we'll get to.
figured that.
We'll get to the turban caper in a little while. So the Men from Sound, the Ambertones, another great band, and the Emeralds. And again, VIPs, Men from Sound, Ambertones, Emeralds, Teen Turbans. That's a pretty damn good lineup too.
I remember that the Emeralds played at the Kennedy Hall so many times that I can't even count how many times we played.
Yeah,
there.
me too. Yeah.
It was like, like people would ask, did you ever play there? It was like, are you kidding?
Yeah, it was like, thank God for that place, kept us working.
Yeah.
Okay, then the next one I have is Little Union Hall, December 17th, 1966. And this flyer says 4 sharp bands. Remember when the word was sharp? Hey man, this guitar is sharp, man. It's sharp. So 4 sharp bands, and at the top it said a bargain dance. And I think it was $1.50, and they used to say donation, right? Not admission. Donation, $1.50 or $2. That's about what it was in those days for these teenage dances. And so the lineup, the 4 sharp bands were the Apollos, the Men from Sound, the Emeralds, and the Righteous Rhythms. Now, that period, we did a lot of gigs with the Righteous Rhythms and the Apollos, mainly Kennedy, but we did some other venues with them. We played a lot with them at that point. So that's another good one. The Little Union was, I forgot what union it was, but remember, Anthony, about, I don't know how many years ago, 8 years ago, whatever, we did a little tour of East LA, and we went to all the venues we could, and we got into a few. We actually got into San Alphonsus Hall, and the stage was the same, and the floor and the ceiling was the same. It was like just like it was 50 plus years ago. So we got in during the day. Just there happened to be an event there. Then we got into the Montebello Ballroom, and somebody happened to just be going there. We said, "Hey, we used to play here 50 years ago. Can we come in?" And again, the two stages were still there, the one above and the one below. And
Surprising, huh?
now, yeah, and so it's all the same, except now it became a Mexican, like Spanish language music venue. And we got into the Little Union, and I took pictures of these places, and CYO Hall as well. But the Little Union was much smaller than the Big Union, hence the name.
Yeah, right.
And I
Absolutely.
forgot what union it was, the textile union. I don't know what it was, but it was a little hall down there on Goodrich, down near the 5 freeway and Atlantic, or around there somewhere, or Garfield, somewhere in there. And this is where the Four Sharp Bands thing happened. And we did a lot of gigs there. And the guy who used to book that place was called Sam Nevada. And I was the booker of my band. So I get calls from Paul Carlin, who booked the Montebello Ballroom in the Big Union, who was an ex-boxer, and he had the broken nose. And sometimes you had to chase him around to get paid. And then Sam Nevada used to book the Little Union. And we used to kind of refer him to him as the Ed Sullivan of East L.A. because he had his neck like this. He was this little guy, right here on our show. And, he was this little guy, Sam Nevada. And he booked that place. Okay, then I have another one here. The last one I have with the Emeralds and my band is the Kennedy Hall again, January 28th, 1967. And the lineup is the Ambertones, the Royal Checkmates, the Men from Sound, the Emeralds, and the Exotics. Now, the Exotics were one of our rival bands. You guys were one of our rival bands, and the other was the Exotics. Really good band.
Because they played the same kind of songs, and they liked the same kind of stuff in a way.
In a way, but they were bluesier. They gravitated to Stones and Kinks and that kind of stuff, and they kind of stayed away from.
I just meant in general, like
but they stayed away from
Asian stuff.
Yeah. We played a lot of the same songs, and we would kind of steal songs from each other. But they were a little more blues based, and I don't think they did Beatles songs. And that's another thing I want to talk to you about. That in the East Side Sound in the 60s, there were a few bands that played Beatles songs, and there were bands that didn't, right? You recall that?
Yeah.
And it was usually because, some bands thought the Beatles weren't bluesy enough, where the Stones were a little more blues based, so they might be more likely to play Stones music. But the bands that I remember that played Beatles songs were us, you guys, the Ambertones, the Midnighters might have done a couple, and I'm trying to remember. Can you think of any others?
Yeah, there wasn't many because it was kind of like I don't know if we could even talk about it, but I mean,
let's talk about it.
I mean, most of the gigs and stuff, there was still like this big machismo thing going on.
Oh yeah, there was that thing going on.
If you played that music, it was like, oh man, that's like sissy music or whatever.
Oh yeah. But yet, even the bands that weren't playing Beatle music, they had Beatle haircuts, started to get their long hair. All that was happening in the look.
It would make me laugh because I'd see some guy that was like a totally non-musical guy, and then he had some little bangs,
all of a sudden,
long hair because it was cool now,
Well, the Midnighters had a total Beatle look at that time, Beatle haircuts. Even Willie G had the thing down to his.
I mean, that actually, to me, that took a lot of guts to be like that.
In East LA.
A real belief in what you're doing,
because people that are going to watch this from other generations, they don't understand.
They won't believe it.
When you grew your hair long in 1965, there were consequences on the street. You
might get beat up.
So it was. Was suspended from school for a day for long hair at Garfield, and I had to go get a haircut to come back to school the next day. Just because my hair was a little bit long.
Isn't that crazy?
But the other reason, there was the machismo thing, but also I think that East LA before the Beatles was very R&B and blues and doo-wop based. That was what was cool. A lot of black music, and so a lot of groups stayed with those influences, and if they did any English stuff, it was stuff that was way more R&B oriented or blues based. So, but that's how you and I became friends, because we both loved the Beatles, and our bands both did cool Beatles songs. I remember you guys were the first ones to do Drive My Car, and we used to do Taxman. But we also did early Mark and the Escorts were doing I Saw Her Standing There and You Can't Do That and all the early Beatles stuff. We proudly and happily did them. And the Blendells used to do Beatles songs, and they were very cool. They were one of the hit bands from the mid 60s in East LA with their
You know,
song La 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 La. Yeah.
I have
But
a
I remember
funny
they used to
memory.
do I'll Cry Instead, you know. I got every reason on earth to be mad.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And then we learned it after they did. But yeah, so the Blendells, Rudy Valona, the lead guitar player, very influential. And the lead singer, Sal Murillo. But Rudy was cool. He liked the Beatles a lot. So anyway, but that's how you and I became friends because we loved the Beatles. Our bands played Beatles stuff. We somehow met when we were about 15 and known each other since. And we still talk about the Beatles to this day.
Well, that's why I went to Garfield and I saw you at Garfield. That's when I kind of remember you from Garfield, but we
Playing
weren't,
or just as a
no,
student?
just in school, just
Yeah.
walking around and stuff. And that's a funny memory that I have. Like
Yeah.
you're infused in my mind with "Please Please Me"
Oh, really?
because it
So
was
we,
like that was like on the radio. It was like a hit on the radio, and then I just remember hearing that all day long and stuff, and then just remember you walking around in Garfield,
wow.
like at a breaks and stuff or at lunch or
Now, had we
whatever.
met already then, or was that before we met?
I don't think so. I think I knew who you were, that you were in a band or something like that. Or maybe somebody told me that,
Yeah.
you like the Beatles or something like
Yeah, man. Well, we still like. So, so then, what? So let's talk about the rock and roll shows now.
that. Okay.
You were a part of at least three of them, if not four.
Yeah, at four, it turns
Yeah.
out.
And the last one I
I
played.
didn't remember that.
Yeah. But I'll tell you my memory and then you tell me yours. But the
Okay.
first rock and roll show I went to, I think it was in 1964. Just I went to it as an audience member. And I remember groups like the Luxuriers and, you know, what's his name? Johnny Gamboa,
Yeah, right,
you
right.
know, and some of those guys were the Vesuvians. You know, they had like surf
Danny
shirts
Lamont
on.
was in there. He was the drummer.
Manny Lamont and the guitar player was Hernandez, Bobby Hernandez, who was later in the Romancers. Yeah, so I remember that first show, and I went to the first several. Um, you were in one of the early ones, right?
Yeah. The the earliest I found is this.
Oh yeah,
So
I think I have that one, and that's
so
1965, May
yeah.
16th, Sunday. And that's let's explain about the Salesian, how Salesian was involved in Taggart and all that. No, he's the one that kind of organized them, didn't he?
Yeah, here I got a picture of him. Let's see where it is here.
Oh yeah, there he is. Yep.
Mr. William A. Taggart, Tagger. He used to spell his name to everybody.
Oh really?
Yeah,
Don't you forget it. So was he the music teacher at Salesian, the Catholic
yeah,
school?
yeah. The
Okay,
band, I think he was a band director.
and a lot of guys from the Midnighters and Willie G was involved. And
He was a trumpet player, like I think in like somebody like Stan Kenton's band or somebody's
wow,
like, and he was like a really great trumpet player and like a real studied kind of like hardcore musician. So he made a lot of those kids into excellent trumpet players. That's like he turned out like all of these great trumpet players from
name
school.
some of them. Like Mike Mercado,
Yeah, Mike Mercado, Sam
Bones.
Ramos, Bones, Bobby Rodriguez,
Mhm.
uh,
Bobby Loya.
Bobby Loya. The one he um, passed away, Roger Barron. He played with us. He was another good trumpet player. Uh, like
And what about guys like the sax players? Like some of the Midnight was like Larry Rendon or
yeah,
uh,
Larry
and
Rendon
who
and
was the
Tony
guy who played
Garcia.
trombone? Romeo Prado, was he involved in that?
Yeah, yeah,
Trombone.
yeah. Salesian High School man turned out great horn players.
And it
Other
was
states too, but I mean especially those.
and it was his idea he started the rock and roll shows, right?
Yeah, I think the first one it was at Lourdes, Our Lady of Lourdes,
Mhm.
there on Third Street, and then it was too small because too many people came or something, so they got a better venue for it. at East LA College.
Auditorium. Yeah. And so I saw the first one at East LA College. I didn't see the one at Lourdes.
I lived
So
right close by there. I used to go to listen to the Armenta brothers and
they were one of the early East LA bands, right?
and
Armenta Brothers.
yeah, I didn't especially want to play, Mexican music, but I liked it because they sounded great, I couldn't go in because I was too young, but I would
Did
just.
you ever see the Jaguars and the Salas Brothers there? Because the Jaguars used to play there. That's how when they first got the
I
Salas
remember them
Brothers.
at St. Alphonsus for some
Yeah, I
reason.
saw them there too.
A lot.
Oh, we also played a lot of gigs with the Jaguars with the Salas Brothers. Yeah, but I remember the Mario Panacqua telling me that they.
The Blue Satins I saw at Our Lady of Lourdes tons of times. Like
Oh,
I
yeah?
would go there, yeah.
Another really good band. Yeah, the Jaguars played there, and that's where he first met the Salas Brothers, and they were just little kids. Yes, yeah. He had to ask their parents if they could join the band and get permission and all that. Yeah. So what's your first memory of playing with the Emeralds at the rock and roll show?
We did the weirdest song there that got, I guess, yeah, I think I talked to you about this, about that playing Wooly Bully.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
But I don't know if that's on the same show as we did 1, 2, 3. I think 1, 2, 3 is the first one. That must have been the earlier one.
Now those CDs recently came out, and it has you guys
I
on
really
the
could see,
album.
yeah, I'll see
Yeah,
that.
so you can check that. But now,
So here, this is what we looked like at that rock and roll show.
okay, yeah. Wow, look how fancy the keyboard with the
Yeah,
name.
right.
Yeah,
That's
a
at
lot of
Velos.
guys there.
Remember Velos? That was that studio.
Veloz, Richie Veloz.
Yeah.
Yeah, we took
Oh,
our photo there too. My dad used to get his photos there as well. That was
so
the place to get it.
so there. This is Roger Barron. He died.
Mhm.
And then this is the one guy that stayed with us. He was older than us. He played piano. That's who was his piano. But we wanted to get a piano, but he was like much older than us. He doesn't really actually look older than us in there, but to us, he was like, maybe a couple of years older. So I'm not sure of his last name. His name is Andy, but I think everybody that I've asked, I think his last name was Perez, Andy Perez. So this is Fred Gonzalez,
Mhm.
the drummer,
Mhm.
and the business leader.
Mhm.
That's the rhythm guitar player, Ray Rosa.
Mhm.
This is Jacob Padilla on
Eighth
bass.
base.
This is Jesse Perez. And then that's Ray
Right.
Ballesteros, the sax player.
And you in the tuxedo, the black.
That's me. And and everybody always
Mhm.
gives me a hard time about that. Like, well, how come you're not dressed like those guys?
Now, what about was the turban incident? Was that the next rock and roll show, or was it that rock and roll show?
It might be that one. I wish I could see
I was in the audience on the turban episode.
Yeah. Okay. So
Well,
we did Woolly Bully. That was one of the songs we did, just because it was like a really popular song.
Oh, it was number one in 1965.
Yeah, it was super popular. So that's why we did it. But I didn't think of that as a serious song, actually.
But there were also Chicanos from Texas, Sam Samudio. Or,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So that was their like shtick, that they put turbans on and stuff. So this was the manager's idea. He said, "Oh, you guys should wear turbans." So they went.
Oh, because of Willie Bully and Sam the
Yeah.
Chicano Pharaohs.
That's it. And actually, I didn't participate in it, as you know.
Yeah.
And then that was like the legend that like, oh, you, ha ha ha, you Anthony, you had a turban on, and I said,
Right.
I wore one of those, and everybody would swear, they would swear that I saw you with a turban on. And I said I didn't,
Okay. So let me tell you from my perspective. I was there in the audience, and you guys came up on the stage that elevates. And so, the first thing you could see are these green, sparkly turbans. And as I recall, did everybody throw the turbans in the audience and take them off, or
that was the whole thing. They said, you're only going to have them on for a couple of seconds, basically, and they're going to just throw it out for a souvenir or something.
Yeah. But so in my mind, you had it on too, because it's hard to know that one guy didn't have it.
I'll tell
But
you, this is what happened.
yeah,
Honestly, I was kind of they were very upset with me, because I knew I'm not going to tell them I'm not going to wear it, because then I'll get all kinds of
right. So you had
static.
it on already? You had it
I
on?
put it on. We got dressed in the dressing room. I had it on. We went on and we came up on that hydraulic stage,
Yeah.
right, like the orchestra
And
thing.
before it peaked, you threw
Yeah,
it off.
that's what I did. I just, I waited and I just got it and threw it behind the amps,
Ooh.
and then everybody was playing the stuck with their turban on, and they were just like, oh man,
And you saved your dignity.
I just, it was too silly for, it was like I had that too cool thing,
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I'm
what
too cool to
prevented
wear a
me.
turban.
Yeah, I'm too cool to wear a turban.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I believe you. I know that's what happened. But it's a great story because everybody remembers those turbans, Okay.
That is hilarious, actually.
So you played at least two or three of those early rock and roll shows, right?
Yeah, well,
Do you
four of
remember
them.
some of the other songs you did?
And I got, you know, I can't remember the songs we did. We just, what usually we always did was whatever was on the radio that was kind of
Yeah.
popular at the
Yeah.
time, and we choose because that was the whole thing.
Oh, that's right. And on these CDs that came out, and on the albums that came out, there was only usually like one song per group, right? It's not like your whole set was there, right?
Yeah, and they would usually always, like, I always thought it was the least representative song
They
that
would
we could
choose.
possibly do,
Yeah.
So, but that's how it went.
I see. So okay. So that explains why we can't know exactly what songs you did, because the
Yeah.
only evidence we have are the ones that are on the albums. Yeah.
So here's another one of these pamphlets. This is from October October
October
10th,
10th, 1965.
5. So this is when this is basically I think this is probably from the same photo session.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah, yeah.
So that's Fred Gonzalez, Ray
Right.
Ballesteros, Jesse Perez, Roger Barron, Ray Rosa, me, Anthony Baray,
Jacob.
Jacob Padilla, and Jesse, I think, Perez. I mean, I'm not, Andy
Oh,
Perez.
yeah. Okay.
They weren't related.
Okay. And who were some of the other people on the bill there?
Oh, this is well, here's the Enchantments.
Enchantments.
Did you say the Enchantments or the Enchanters?
Enchantments. Yeah, that was Bobby Brambilla. And,
I'm getting all like goofed up, like looking at this backwards. The Enchanters.
well, that's the Enchanters. Yeah.
And then let's see, what else we got here?
I don't have that program.
This is the Etalons.
I remember the Edelons.
The Etalons, and then where's Bobby? That's Mike Mercado, who got into the Emeralds.
Yeah.
And that's Dr. Robert Rodriguez now.
Who I'm going to interview shortly for this thing.
Great trumpet player. Both of them are great trumpet players.
Is that Bones?
Yes, that's Bones on trombone. Mm-hmm. Sam Bones Ramos.
The late Sam Ramos.
Yeah. And I forgot the other guys' names. So the Etalons, that was Taggart made up that band. That was Taggart's band. And here's the Amber Tones.
Okay. Oh yeah, there's Hernandez. What's his first name?
Henry.
Oh yeah, Henry. And there's Eddie Delgado, the brother of the guy in the Exotics.
Getting all goofed up here. And in the middle, Charlie Munoz.
Oh yeah, there's Eddie Delgado. Yeah, right there. Yeah, his brothers Danny and Bobby were in the Exotics. The band I mentioned a little while ago was a rival band of ours. And then now the Delgado brothers band still exists with Bobby on bass and two younger brothers. The Delgado's a great band. They're still around.
VIPs.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And there's a couple of other guys in there that I don't remember them really being from around there, but the Impalas, you remember them?
Oh, yeah, Ronnie Reyes. Absolutely. They were kind of a rival band of ours too. They were kind of around our age. Yeah. Ron Reyes, guitar player. Went on to play with everybody. Yaki, Old Time Religion, me,
And then these
Cannibal
guys,
Headhunters.
Art and the Fabulons. You know, we were good friends with these guys.
Uh-huh.
And so when at certain gigs, their horn players, these three guys, I think, basically, they would come and play with us, or we'd have like 5 horns. Just like we'd like do James Brown songs, and we had like a 5-horn lineup. You know, it was like a great thing. I
Mhm.
loved it. It just like sounded so great.
Art and the Fabulous. I remember Art and the Nightlighters. Remember them?
Mhm.
They played some of the rock and roll shows.
And here's the counts. And this isn't from that one. This is from the previous booklet that I showed you.
Another good band.
Uh-huh.
Well, they had an Asian guy, Japanese American. I believe his name was Matsunaga
Yeah.
there, and he had a Strat. He was good. Good band, the Counts. A lot of good bands, man. Blue Satins, like you said.
Tons. So that's both of those are from 65.
Okay.
So that's, and then this is, here's one from February of 1966.
Mhm.
I don't remember playing with the Midnighters at any of those things, but I guess we must have, because they're in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
There's Willie G.
Mhm.
Let's see here. Where are we here? This is the photo of the Emeralds that I call the football lineup. Like we had like a bunch of guys. Anthony Baray.
This time you're all wearing tuxedos. They said, we're going to wear tuxedos too.
I think they probably didn't want to go buy those. That's probably why they didn't want it in the first place. So that and then here there's Art and the Fabulons again.
Okay. Yeah.
They were kind of like, you know, they used to have a hearse. They used to move their equipment around, and then sometimes when they weren't playing, they would loan it to us, and we would take our equipment around in it.
Oh, cool.
Friends
Neil
with-
Young famously had a hearse, he'd drive around in his
Yeah,
old days.
I think that was like a thing or something in those days, because a lot of bands thought that was cool to have a hearse, but it's like kind of icky. if you
Icky,
think
but
about it.
practical. You get a lot of gear in there and a lot of people.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're actually real big.
Yeah.
Here's another one from 66. This is from May 15th, 1966. So right another couple of months.
I have that one. Yeah, that's a good one.
So I guess we just we didn't go get another picture, because this is the same picture as before. Just used it.
Yeah.
I guess we just didn't want to go and get another photo session done.
Spend some more money.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So the Emeralds went on all through the 60s. You guys played a lot of gigs. Very popular, everybody thought you guys were good. You guys always sounded, you played the songs correctly and sounded a lot like the record. And so, your reputation lives on till today. And,
And that's it, kind of like all of the stuff that we've been talking about and I'm showing you, that was kind of like the early Emeralds, because it really changed later because we didn't have horns, and,
right.
and a lot of people didn't like us anymore because we didn't have horns. They're like, they go, "Oh, you're just playing all that rock and roll stuff in that,
Yeah.
But that's what I wanted to play, that music. I was like, that's what I want to play.
The times were changing, we
Yeah,
changed along with the times.
I want to play guitar songs,
Yeah, we got rid of our horns as well. We had a Barry and a tenor sax. But yeah, we became more rock and roll, and later on, we got into the British invasion, got into the psychedelic period, um, and then in 19 like probably late 70s, somewhere in there, after my
Well, like,
band broke
well,
up. Huh, what were you gonna say?
so this is still the Emeralds with you in it, right? This is in the 70s, right?
Yeah, right. That's what I was going to say. So I joined your band like probably late 70. I got the date somewhere. And I did about 6 months with you guys and played a lot of gigs every weekend. And we were really good. It was a four-piece. It was me and you on guitars. What's his name? Johnny Joe Ramos
Hmm.
on bass, great bass player. And Jack Diamore, a good friend, on drums and vocals. And it was a tight, great band. And I have great memories of it. And my fond memories was doing She Said by the Beatles, which we did just like the record. And I sang lead on it, as I recall. It was a blast. And we do like Emmett Rhodes. Yeah. Oh, I'd love to do that again someday.
Yeah.
It's a great song. And then we did, I remember we did Woodstock by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And we did, Emmett Rhodes, Down with My Face to the Floor. We did some fun stuff. Then we did stuff like Helpless, and you and I shared a lot of lead vocals, and it was just a solid, great band. And the culmination of that gig was we played a rock and roll show. I believe it was probably in either early 70, yeah, probably in 71, early 71. And I remember the songs we did. We did No Time by the Guess Who.
Yeah.
We did a bunch of Neil Young stuff that I sang lead on and played guitar lead on. We did like Southern Man in Ohio, those two great songs. And that was very different for East LA, man. We're like rocking Neil Young. And then you guys did a little set without me, a couple of songs by Grand Funk Railroad. It was really
Yeah.
awesome.
Right.
So it was like really, we kicked some serious ass. Unfortunately, we weren't recorded, and it was because of me, and I feel bad about that to this day because I had just gotten signed by Lou Adler and Ode Records. Lou Adler, a major producer, and it said I can't record for any other labels and blah blah blah. So I thought I might get in trouble, but looking back on it, I could have gotten away with it. Nobody would have known, but I was
Yeah,
young.
but you didn't want to take a chance,
Yeah.
really. 'Cause what you don't know, you might as well be
When
safe.
you're 20 years old, you're just,
Yeah.
you're just kind of intimidated by the business and
Yeah.
lawyers. But so I feel really bad we weren't recorded because I'd give anything to have those tapes. But you just said you just found a photograph of it.
Well,
You have
look
that
at
handy?
so this is just before you're talking about,
Oh my God.
and so that's actually that's me right there. I don't look anything like that anymore. And that's Jack Diamore
Yeah,
on drums. There's Johnny Joe,
right,
and there's Sam Bones
right,
Ramos.
right.
He was like a very talented person. He was a
Oh
great
yeah.
musician and singer, but he got drafted, and
Mhm.
so that's what ended up here.
Oh, that's a picture I've never seen.
So there's you, and
Uh,
that's our manager back there.
oh, Jack, you, me, and is that Johnny Joe?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and that was a great band. I really
Yeah,
regret
it
leaving it,
was
man.
right.
Huh?
Like these two pictures, like that's when the band was sounding really good, like super good.
Mhm. Yeah, man. Yeah, I look forward to getting that picture, a copy of that. Yeah, so I just have a great memory of that show and that band. And I was trying to get busier with the recording, so I had to leave the group. And that's another thing I regret because I probably could have gotten away with staying longer. I would have loved to, but life goes like it goes.
Can't control it.
No. So
You
then,
tried.
yeah, then coincidentally in 72, I think you had met Art Brambilla, who was had worked for Capitol Records and was wanted to get something going in the music business for himself. And he convinced Capitol Records to listen to a lot of East LA bands. There's a lot of talent there. And they gave him some studio time at independent studios in Studio City. And I came in with my guys and recorded a couple of songs. And Yaki came in and recorded a couple of songs. Tierra came in, recorded a couple songs. You guys, the Emeralds, and we were all kind of recording at the same place at the same time. And at that time, I think Bones was back, right? It was you, Bones, Johnny Joe, and did you say Aaron came back?
Yeah, Aaron.
What happened to Jack? And how did he leave? Do you remember?
Well, he got that deal with what's his name?
I thought that didn't happen until like 1980 or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was much later.
or
So I don't
maybe he
know.
just left. Maybe he left. He was maybe he, but it was something to do with that because it was uh,
Well, he
you
was
know,
going to join the group Rock Rose. That was before, remember?
Rock
He wound up
Rose.
with Rock
That's right.
Rose.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, and they did an album for Columbia.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
with Frank Demi and
yeah,
the
yeah.
guys.
So, but Aaron is great drummer, and so he had been in the Emeralds for a while in the mid '60s, right? And then he came back then.
Yeah,
So, how long did Aaron play with you guys?
not even a year.
Really?
Like yeah, it was maybe 6 to 8 months, something like that.
Mhm. Now that rock and roll show we did, I don't remember what other bands were on that. Do you remember? Or do you have
No,
you don't have a booklet for that?
no. I don't think they see. I don't think that was a Silesian, was it?
May
I,
not have
all
been.
all of
No.
these are from Silesian. So
Yeah. The
so
Salesians are the earlier ones, right? Then I think it went on without Salesian.
and then there was other things like Battle of the Bands, and
Oh
they had all kinds
yeah,
of
that
other
started.
events, but
Yeah.
they weren't really the same thing.
No,
The
they were.
rock and roll shows were like supposed to be a show,
Yeah. Then it
and then
became a battle, and then somebody won.
yeah,
One
yeah,
band won.
got a prize or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't involved with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was the Emeralds played one last thing at that place, but it wasn't the Emeralds. What it was, I mean, it was the Emeralds at the time. It was like four guys, and I couldn't find any pictures of that stuff. But uh, what we did was we backed up Bones. Bones had like this dream of like being the star kind of a thing. I know it's like a silly thing, really, but he always had this, he was always trying to promote himself, and Taggart was trying to help him. He'd go take publicity pictures and stuff. So this was like and I remember thinking like, I used to think that was like a cheesy idea, but somehow it just seemed so important to him that I thought, why not? Like, so we'll just back him up.
So now was he wearing the tuxedo and you guys are wearing something
No, no,
else?
no. This was like rock. Like we were like rock. We were like rock
Oh yeah,
guys.
dressing like whoever,
Yeah,
pre-dressing.
yeah. It's exactly Levi's.
Yeah.
And so we played, and it was really good. I have some recordings someplace that we did like some Rolling Stone songs, and then we did some Yes songs that were like.
Wow.
But the terrible thing was that the one of the songs, I seen all good people, it just they ran out of tape and that whole song got cut off, and it was like, oh my god, that was like the crowning climax of the thing, and
Wow.
it just the guy goes, the tape just ran out, like
And was that a Yes song?
yeah. I seen
Wow.
all good people,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So we got the front part of it, there's like another song that's connected to it, but I'll look for that. So I'll give you a copy of
Yeah, I'd
it.
love to hear that.
It
Did you guys
sounded really good. It was like amazing. Like those songs came out really good.
did you guys ever try Roundabout?
Yeah,
Well, that's a killer tune.
we did a lot of Yes songs. Except, I wasn't a good enough guitar player to do some of those songs. It was just like they were too hard.
Those guys are
They
crazy.
were just really. I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, then that was later years. Then you started having other cover bands, Energive and different things in
Yeah,
the
yeah, right.
'70s. You guys played some challenging things.
And this is the weird thing. This is like I told you about that weird. Uh, we recorded. We were the Emeralds, but
Oh
we
yeah.
we the producer said do you want to be put down on the label as the Emeralds? And I said, no, that's like, it's like at that time, this was like
Passe.
1968,
Yeah, it was
I said,
passe.
nah, I said like, we'll just think up another name. Anyway, it was almost no, it was like I was the only one left from the original lineup. It was kind of my band all the time, but it was just like
Mhm.
so this band had Robert Duran on drums and the sax and flute player Manuel Silva, who died kind of tragically, and Ray Nunez, another kind of
Tragic figure.
short life, yeah. Ray Nunez on bass, uh, and me, and so we recorded. And the guys weren't that into it, but we just came up with something. This was a guy, the producer was Cal Wyman, who was like the lead singer for the Incredibles. I'll make it easy for you. That guy. He just liked us. He saw us someplace, and then he said, you want to record something? I want to be a producer. I'm sick and tired of touring and stuff. I want to be a producer. So so he did that, and we just came up with some songs, and we went and recorded them. And this was like in 1968, like, and we were going over there to
The
like
West Side.
117th Street and stuff, and then we're
Oh,
like I was nervous, like because we would be going over there on that side, and now it seems funny that I was, but I was kind of worried because
you mean because it was the black side of town, right?
yeah, I mean
But
because
there were gangs and stuff. There were legitimate reasons to
I
be
mean there
nervous
was like
in East
riots
LA
in
too.
right in 60 or
60.
68. There was big fires and
Oh,
riots stuff going on
right,
in
that's
the
right.
city, so so we recorded it, and I was like, I thought, oh, this is great, maybe it'll come out or something. And then the guy died. He just right then, and so everything just dropped. It was just like, that's it, it's over.
How many songs did you do, by the way?
No, I don't know, 3 or 4 songs, and uh, but I think that the one that did eventually did come out on a vinyl was the one that we liked the most. The other ones they were just instrumentals. We just did
So just one of the four came out that was not even a B-side?
Yeah, yeah, there was, but it was like it should have been B minus side. So, that's what happened. It was like it was gonna maybe come out, and I wish it would have come out. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened, but nothing happened. So I just totally forgot about it, and that's why, because Cal, and he was like such a sweet guy. He was a great guy person, and he really tried to do a great job, and he was like kind of a big guy, so probably I don't know the actual cause of his death, but because that's it, I was just like all connections with him and everybody was just broken off right there.
Now, what name did you use on the label?
uh, so I came up with that name, the spitting image,
Mhm.
and I thought it was like really cute, like to myself, because I was thinking that means like people are gonna see us and they go, "That's the emeralds," like, "Oh,
Oh, the
that's the
spitting image.
spitting image of the emeralds." That's why it was like so lame. I came up with that name like
And
that.
wasn't it kind of a funky tune, funk kind of tune?
Yeah, it was we call it JB's Latin, so it was for James Brown's Latin, and
Oh,
it was just that we just we didn't try to do that. We just were trying to like jam and stuff and come up with some songs because the guy said, "Get some songs. I want to take you into the studio and record." So that one happened like that. We just and the guys were not that into it, so I, I I recorded. I remember I recorded us like at my house. Like I lived. Do you remember where Nick's hot dog stand was on Whittier Boulevard? Kind of
yeah.
into Montebello. Well, I lived on that block just behind Nick's, and so the band used to practice there all the time. So in our sessions of trying to come up with something, I would just record it, And then later I just try to like piece it together and make a song out of just our jamming, just improvising and stuff. So that's how that song came about. It was and first I didn't even want to say that I wrote that, because it was like I thought I kind of arranged it, like, but I guess I did. I mean, it wouldn't have happened because they didn't actually want to do it. They weren't that interested in going and recording. But I sure was.
Why record? Why record?
Yeah, we're gonna go record.
But didn't it surface like decades later? You it came out on something, or you came the record
Yeah,
came out on.
absolutely. It came out like I didn't know about it. It was like already out, on YouTube.
Hmm.
And somebody put, just put up that record, and it was it said a 70s funk compilation.
Hmm.
Like it's a heavy 70s funk, and it
Right.
wasn't 70s funk because it was
60s.
like 68, that's when we did it. But it was on that because it seemed like it wasn't from the 60s. It's kind of in a way. Uh, so so anyway, that's then some kind of like interest came into that, you know, towards that recording.
Hmm.
Somebody called me. I forgot who it was. And they said, "Hey, were you ever in a band called Spitting Image?" And I go, "Oh yeah, yeah. How did you find out about that?" Because it would, like we didn't ever use that out in public.
Hmm.
Uh, and he says, "Oh yeah, there's this song on it's got your name on it, And I said, "Really?" So that's why I looked on YouTube, and it was like they had like a picture of the 45 record, the single record label with my name on. That's how why he asked me about that, and it had like a lot of views, like over 100,000 views, and I thought, I didn't even know about that,
And it
and
wound up on a compilation CD or what?
yeah, and
Do you have a
so
copy of that CD or that whatever it is record?
I don't, not yet, actually.
Are they available like on
Yeah,
eBay
yeah,
or?
they're available on everywhere, like everything, like Spotify
Oh,
and
nice.
Amazon and
Cool.
all of the venues. Because what happened was some DJs were calling me from England and Berlin. All
Wow.
these all these DJs were calling me about that record, and they're asking me, they have a copy. They wanted to get a vinyl copy of it. And I said, I don't have that. I didn't even know that it was out at all. And then they were telling me, oh yeah, it's like it's real popular over here at our gigs and stuff.
Wow.
And so I was like, wow. And then after that, then finally some record company that was in London, they called me and they said, would you want to sign a contract to let us use your song on our compilation? It's like a funk compilation, and we'd like to use your song. So that's how I got it. I said, yeah,
Nice.
sure.
So what's the name of that compilation?
It's on a compilation album named Jasper the Vinyl Junkie Presents Vinyl Junkie Thangs.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thangs.
yeah, yeah.
It's your thing. Do what you want to do.
Thang. And the name of the song is JB's Latin by Spitting Image. This is me at that session doing that song on
Oh
68.
wow, look at that.
Yeah. And
Talk
there's
about
my guitar that I traded all of that stuff for and everything and money.
is that the country gentleman?
Yeah.
And are you wearing a two-tone shirt?
Yeah. Like like those cholo shirts?
Yeah, yeah. Orale.
Yeah, like I was like, hey man, remember they used to like fold it over and then they carry it on their
Oh
arm.
yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. So it goes to show that once you record something, you don't know. Like our first record, Mark and the Escorts, "Get Your Baby," we recorded it in '65, and like 50 years later, it winds up in a movie, right?
That's
Logan Lucky. It's crazy. Once
yeah,
it's
yeah.
born, it can wind up somewhere.
And a friend of mine that was really savvy about like the record industry and stuff, like, because she said, "Did you ever do any songs?" And I go, "Yeah," and I said, "But I don't think they came out." She goes, If they put it out, I'll find it." And then she said, "No, I didn't find that one." So I don't know how it was a secret.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The only other thing I was thinking was just, it's really funny because our musical life in East LA really paralleled. I mean, we talked about, playing in the school band and blah, 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 surf music. But overall, the Emeralds and Mark and the Escorts and Men from Sound, my other group, we evolved, and all the groups kind of evolved with the times, right? Many of us started with surf music, and then we were doing the doo-wop and the oldies and the R&B, and then Motown and Stax Volt, and then the British Invasion. And then, so the bands, a lot of us, you and us, and most of the bands, Ambertones, whoever, you might do some doo-wop song, followed by a Beatles song, followed by
Right.
an R&B, Stax Volt, and that's what was so cool, because the radio was like that too, right? Nowadays
Like
you
top
have
40, right?
the top 40, you'd have
radio,
Frank Sinatra, James
you've got
Brown, Beatles.
everything.
It was fantastic. And then in the late 60s, when Cream and Hendrix came out, all the bands started getting psychedelic and doing Cream songs. And then, later on, after we left that scene, the younger groups, started doing the punk music. Whatever was happening in the greater rock world, East LA would take it on and do their own version of it and be influenced by it. And to this day, there's always been East LA bands moving with the times, and it's fantastic. It's always been a hotbed of music and bands, and until today, it's great.
I'm so happy that it is kind of still like that, and it's gotten better, I think.
Yeah, but the
Because
one thing I'll just say, one thing we were lucky about that's not true today was, by some miracle, in the 60s, when all these bands were happening, teenage bands, there were all these teenage venues. All the places we just mentioned, St. Alphonsus Auditorium, Little Union, Big Union, Kennedy Hall, Montebello Ballroom, Huntington Park Ballroom, all the little Croatian Hall, Serbian Hall, all the places, Rainbow Gardens, all the places we played had teenage dances, so no alcohol. And so, kids 14 through 18 or whatever had a place to go. And I don't think it was happening in the 70s or 80s or 90s. There were no teenage venues, just nightclubs and parties.
Remember the teenage fairs?
Oh yeah, teenage fair.
Like those are like that's something that our band really look forward to playing at those places.
Did you play?
Yeah, like several times.
Wow, that was a big deal.
And it was like a big deal. Like, I'd look forward to like the whole year waiting for that thing, and then we would try to do songs that you couldn't do at a dance, remember? Because it's like,
oh yeah, you had to dance.
Can we dance to this,
Right. Wasn't the formula like 2 or 3 fast ones and a slow one? Yeah, you had to throw a slow one in every couple of songs.
There was a criteria for a dance band,
Yeah.
had to be danceable.
Yeah, you had to be able to grind and belly rub a few songs.
And and all of the songs I wanted to play later on, where you couldn't dance to those at all.
Yeah. So that's what you could do at the teenage fair, huh?
Yeah.
Well, like something when we did She Said, that wasn't a dance tune.
Right.
It was just a great song. Wow. So it was just a great, incredible time. I'm so happy that, I was just so lucky enough to be born into that time and place. I wouldn't trade it, because it was a incredible scene that just kind of spontaneously happened, right? Nobody planned it or organized it. It's just the time was right for people to want to make bands, and electric guitars were out, and rock and roll was young, and all these different kinds of music came out, and it was just it just happened, and it doesn't happen many places. But
I mean, that's how I felt. I remember after the 60s were over and into the 70s, I thought, man, that just seemed like there was like that electricity in the air then. Everything was like so charged with energy, and everything was like so up. But there was a lot of social turmoil going on.
Of course, Vietnam War and all that.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then all of the social changes of like the generations were like, kind of upset with their offspring taking a different path.
Generation gap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a great time.
Well, the other thing that happened in the late 60s is that's when the Latin thing started coming in, Santana and Malo, and then a lot of the East LA groups like the VIPs became El Chicano, and the Salas brothers became Tierra, and people would bring in Timbal. The Village Callers one of the first groups.
Santana at Woodstock did a good promo for Latin
Yeah,
music.
exactly. But even before Santana and Woodstock, the Village Callers brought in timbales and congas, and some of the East LA groups
Yeah,
were
yeah,
already going Latin. They were the first ones I remember.
yeah.
But by the late 60s, a lot of East LA bands were doing Latin grooves and stuff, even throwing in some Spanish. So that's what I called it, the Latinization of East LA, as far as musically, didn't come till the late 60s, because early 70s. Because before that, we were just emulating British invasion and doo-wop and black music and surf
Yeah.
music and other people's music. But even then, sometimes some of our vibe would get into that stuff. But I'm saying the Latinization didn't come till the Chicano movement and late 60s, early 70s. And then later in the early 70s, you played with the Midnighters for a while, right?
Yeah, yeah. I got in there. This is like what we were talking about earlier about, like, I'm not sure like when the Emeralds exactly ended,
And
but it wasn't too long after that. I don't think it was a year passed. It was like, months passed. And then Eddie Torres, their manager, he called me up, and then he's I didn't realize that, he says, "Oh yeah, I was like, I always wished I could get you in the band, but I knew you had your own band." And I thought,
nice.
really, and he goes, and this is a funny thing that he told me. He said, "I was so impressed when you used to play the harmonica, because we would play, I think we played like like a maybe a Dylan song, and we used to do I Should Have Known Better,
Mm.
that Beatles song, because I had one of those
Oh,
harmonica holders and play." He goes, "I couldn't believe it. You were playing the harmonica and the guitar at the same time." And I said, "But I can't do that in the Midnighters. That's like, that'd be ridiculous." And he goes, "That's all right, But he just was so impressed with that. He thought that was like a superhuman
yeah,
thing. And I said,
right, right.
"Believe me, it's not anything."
Yeah, I got to work with Eddie years later, on the Boulevard project, but that was late 80s. But interesting character, man, and what ball of energy, huh?
I learned, kind of like the unseen part of the business of all of the bands and stuff through Eddie, hanging out with him and just going with him and stuff. It was entertaining. He's an entertaining guy, boy.
Oh yeah,
He and I didn't know that he was like a Marine,
yeah,
all
yeah. Yeah,
that
I didn't know
time.
either.
I had no idea he was like a drill instructor or something like that. And like, I never knew that, but he was like a dynamic guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, he just would go all over, and he'd be telling guys, "Hey, you do this thing."
He used
He
to
had,
say he would say that he used to like to work so hard all day, all night. So when he got home, he would just die. In other words, he would
yeah,
just pass out from exhaustion because he worked so much all day. You know.
he did. I mean, like, and he had that his little army of guys, his
Yeah.
helpers.
Putting up the posters on
Yeah,
the telephone poles all
they'd go
night.
all over the city putting those posters up.
Yeah.
Like, amazing, because I went with him sometimes, because I wanted to just like see behind the scenes kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And it was a big education for me, like, how that thing really happened, like it did. And I realized that it was too late for me actually to realize this, but if you're going to make something happen, you got to do it yourself, and put
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that energy into it.
yeah.
Don't wait around for somebody to come and hand it to you.
Right, right. So were you the first guitar player to replace George Dominguez, or one of the first?
I was in the band with George
Oh
Dominguez.
wow, that's
So
cool.
I replaced Roy
Oh,
Marcus.
okay.
It was before, like now, I don't even know if there's any original Midnighters left in there anymore. I think even Larry
Larry
retired.
Rendon might be
I
the.
think he retired or something.
Larry did?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Wow.
So, but then it was like all of those guys were collecting together because Eddie and Huggy Boy, remember that DJ Huggy Boy? I forgot what his real name is, but he
Dick
had
Hug.
yeah, Dick Hug, the Huggy Boy. Yeah. So they made interest happen again for the Midnighters, because I think they were like re-releasing their recordings or something. And then so all of the original Midnighters that weren't playing with them anymore wanted to come back because they were getting all of these gigs. That's what it was like. So they would play like 3 nights a weekend, and then they would play like at 4 places a night, and up and down California in the same night.
And you had to be in some scary small planes, right?
Yeah. That was amazing. Did I tell you about that thing
Oh,
about,
yeah.
because man, those guys, they used to party like really heavy, and so we're in this. It was like a Cessna, like a two-engine Cessna, like maybe like an eight-person plane, that could fit eight people. And then that was a routine that we would play like in East LA, go play at the Palladium, and then go to the El Monte Airport and get in there, and then go fly up somewhere like to San
Fresno or something.
Jose or some,
Bakersfield,
yeah, not even Bakersfield, but way up north, like up way up
the
north.
Bay Area.
And so uh they would be all, you know, tanked up by the time we were going to go fly, like that, because that was the last thing on the list, So
Tanked up.
yeah, I mean, and those guys, man, they would be smoking and drinking, and so this we had this lady, her name was Pinky. She was like an older lady, like an old serious lady. She was a pilot, and so
Well, Pinky the pilot.
yeah, it was funny. It was like psychedelic,
Oh,
So,
no.
so, so this one time, she was saying, I told you guys, I don't want you to be smoking that stuff in here. Like, yeah, you turn it off, and then they go, oh, okay, okay. And then they just, like, they didn't pay attention to her. So she said, if you guys don't, if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to take this plane and nosedive this plane right now.
Oh,
And then, so they didn't pay attention to her, and she just went, and oh man, my good, it was like worse than a roller coaster. It was just like, like going down, and then she pulled up out of that, and then all of those guys were then.
they stopped smoking right at that point.
Absolutely, but they were laughing. They were just because they were like they were smoking and stuff, and they just thought that was so hilarious that she did that. Like Romeo Prado, he goes, "Oh my God!" He goes, I can't even say what, but he goes, I think I had an experience right there.
They enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Oh, jeez.
and they were just like laughing because it was funny. They just like she was like serious as a heart attack, but those guys were just goofing off and
And you were
stuff.
on that plane, right?
Yeah, yeah, it
Oh,
was.
jeez.
It was just like I don't know if you ever been on a big roller coaster, but that's
Oh,
what
yeah. When it goes to the
it
top.
felt. It felt like that, like but longer than a roller coaster. This is like a huge long dive, like
It's scary.
it scared them into stop doing that ever.
That's good. Wow. So did you play after George left? Did you stay with the group a while, George Dominguez? Or would,
Yeah, yeah. For I don't even. I think he was always in since. Yeah, I think the lineup, the lineup that kept changing was the singers because they were
yeah, yeah,
always wanting Willie to do the gigs
yeah.
because it was like how could it be the Midnighters when then somebody else singing Willie's songs, but he didn't come at first, so it was like a big lineup. There was a guy named Al Anaya. He was
I
the
remember him.
yeah
Wasn't he with the Impalas? I think he was with the
yeah
Impalas.
yeah yeah. So he was a funny guy. I like that guy. He's a really good guy, and he was a good singer. He would had a good voice. So he was first, and then we did a lot of gigs when I think I was with him for 2 or 3 years. So at the beginning it was Alan Naya, and then they got different guys. They
Did
got
they have Hank Castro back
yeah
then?
Hank Castro and Charlie Munoz from the Ambertones, and then Little Ray Jimenez. Uh, the cavalcade of singers. They were all good singers, but they all were always trying to get Willie, but he didn't want to do it. But then eventually, I think that they were getting enough, business that or they talked him into it or something, and then he did the gigs, and then it was great. It was like the right thing, like that's the right singer.
My old bass player and friend, Rick Rosas, played with the Midnighters for a little while in the 70s. But were you ever in the band when he was in it?
No,
That was
no,
kind of
I think
later.
I was when I played. There was only the Midnighters,
The
like
original guys,
like
not the original.
and I think even George Salazar subbed in there, like and then Danny Lamont. It was like, but they were all of the original guys would like go back and forth. So it wasn't with anybody. Well, no, that's wrong. Actually, the bass player, there was, oh, what was his name? He was a really good bass player, but he was the only one that wasn't an original guy.
Did
Jimmy,
Benny play with you guys? Benny Lopez?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like that, like Benny
Did Jimmy play? Jimmy Espinoza?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, this must have been fun.
Yeah, well, it was. I mean, they earned a good living, that's for sure. Like surprisingly, like
Yeah, yeah. So overall, what's your, well, I think you might have already said it, but just your memories of the whole East Side sound of the 60s. I mean, you had a lot of fun, right? And like you said, it was a magical time. We were young, we were excited. It seemed like magic, the Beatles seemed like magic, it was like, it's just something about when you're young that you can't get
I
back.
loved it. I mean, I was like in the band 24/7. It was like that,
Living it.
that was my thing. Like there was nothing else I wanted to do, or I
You didn't
wasn't.
care about school, right?
No. I dropped out of high school. I stopped, and I talked to my parents, and my mother said, you can't not have at least a high school diploma. So and I said, well, I'll go back, and I did. I just went back later and got a GED. But the band was so hot at the time, like I was like, I'm having too much fun. I can't just, I just want to. And she said she was so. And then my father was totally, with me on all that stuff. So
Well, but interestingly enough, you dropped out of high school, then you got your GT later, but then you went and got like infinite credits in college,
yeah,
enough for a
I
PhD if
took
you
two
put them
majors,
all together.
two computer majors simultaneously.
And then Cal Arts,
Yeah.
which is a whole other thing, yeah. So you've got plenty of education later.
Well, I didn't know that I was doing, I was kind of nervous about that. It wasn't like, but it was a no-brainer. It's like, this is happening right now. And I wanted to try as much as I could to just be a good musician. That's, I
Yeah,
really wanted to do that.
yeah. And both you and I are such Beatle fans. I mean, during the 60s, to grow up with their albums coming out in real time and the records was
Remember, like,
talk about magical.
you knew their new album was coming out, and then when it would come out, you would be like, just like,
Couldn't wait to open it, put it
yeah,
on.
you're right there at the store, and then when they opened the doors.
It's like I remember when I bought Beatles 65 and I hadn't heard any of the tracks. You put it on and this happened once before. I
Right,
mean,
right, right.
they do stuff like that. Like the singer comes in before the band.
Yeah.
They're so innovative. And I remember just like, oh, right off the bat, blows you away. No, I just wouldn't trade it. So to have the East Side Sound happening, the Beatles happening, and everything else.
And we both got to see them too.
Yeah, yeah, I saw them three
That's
times.
just what's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you to them. And the one we didn't talk about the clothes, right? In the early days, just like the Beatles, we all wore the same outfits, matching suits, matching whatevers. And it wasn't until really, I think maybe the Rolling Stones were one of the first bands that they dressed individually. And then everybody, I remember by around 67, we started wearing whatever, Levi's, flannel shirts, vests, whatever. Then, we started dressing different in the late 60s. But there was a certain look in the early 60s. Everybody had nice suits or, you know, matching different kinds of shirts.
I think I think we would have gotten a lot of flack at the end of the '60s if we were wearing a suit,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
right? Like like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young,
Yeah.
those
Buffalo
days,
Springfield.
and Buffalo, yeah, like all of those guys. That it would have been. You'd have to be. You would have to have been really a straight arrow, really,
Yeah.
to that was your badge, right? It's
Yeah.
like if you were wearing a suit in those times, you were
Yeah.
like on the other side of the fence.
Right. Even the R&B groups, like Marvin Gaye or a lot of the Motown groups, they started dressing individually and kind of psychedelic, and
Yeah,
there's no more of the suits. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's an amazing time, man. Magical time. And we were
yeah,
lucky to just be in it. We were just lucky to be born into it.
yeah. That's what I think too. It's
Yeah.
like it was just you couldn't see that coming.
No,
And then it went back to just humdrum after that.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, in the 70s. But you know, it was a cool scene, but it was never that magical like when you're young and it's first happening and all this music is being born. I mean, James Brown, who invented funk, remember like when Out of Sight and Papa's Got a Brand New Bag came out? Brand new thing. British Invasion was brand new. Motown was brand new. It was just a lot of new music was being born, and nowadays almost everything is a rehash of the earlier stuff.
It's so funny that I always look at all those things on YouTube, all of those people
Yeah.
that loved then and still continue to love. And and you see them and they look young, because they used to be like James Brown. I used to see James Brown when I was like a little kid looking at him like he's like a man,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this guy's a
Yeah, yeah,
man.
yeah.
And then on the other side, I'm looking at like, man, that guy's looking like a young boy now,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's amazing, amazing times. I don't know what else to
Yeah,
say.
absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't trade that for anything. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely not. It's something I didn't want to put on the end, but I was going to say that for the, you don't have to put this in, but I mean, it's serious. It's always in my mind, like how we got treated a lot because of being Hispanic.
Mhm.
The Emeralds got some flack from people on that stuff. Even like at the teenage fair at POP, we played there, and
Okay,
they
let's
were
talk about that. So you're saying when we would leave East LA, we would feel that.
you couldn't go out.
Okay, talk about that.
Well, there was like a lot of gigs that we played at. Uh, that yeah, that's what happened. Like I said, like from word of mouth, so that some people that lived on the west side of LA, saw some dance, and then they say, hey, we got to get those guys. And they liked us. Those people did, but we would go into different, socioeconomic environments, like where, we were like out of East LA, and then we like that one that really comes to mind all the time. It bothers me is that we played at the um, teenage fair, and I think there was a contest or something that we were in, uh, and I mean, we sounded great. The band sounded great. And then there was all these people like saying all kinds of like, slurs and stuff as we were just setting up, uh, just bad stuff, like, hey, get off the stage, beaners, like, and they're just like, laughing and stuff. And and then the funny thing, it never bothered Fred, the drummer. He said, "Yeah, but did you see him after we stopped? Like we stopped. They were out there like trying to hang out with us, and they were dancing when we were playing. He go, like he looked at it like that, like we won. Like
Yeah, but I'm so glad you brought that up because I wasn't thinking of that in East LA we were insulated, right? That
yeah,
whole East LA circuit were Chicanos mainly, and so there was never race wasn't brought up or Beaner. Nothing. We were
yeah,
just people playing music in our environment. But if you leave, it's a whole other story. I remember Little Ray Jimenez told me when he played at the Santa Monica Civic with a bunch of white groups and he said and the premiers were backing him up. So it was Little Ray and the premiers, and he said people were yelling at him and they were just getting hostility, being called names like you're saying, and really giving him a hard time. But then they kicked ass, and they kicked ass, and I think they may have won the people over too. But
but there was still, I mean, there was that was just entrenched,
yeah,
like that kind of prejudice and bigotry and stuff. It was alive and well then.
yeah.
Like another thing that comes to mind is that they hired us to play. I don't think I'm sure we didn't play in the Coconut Grove, but it was. I think the some people wanted to hire us for their party, and then they had like a party or something in the Coconut Grove, and they were like really wealthy, and then they wanted us to play outside in the plaza or something in between
Mm,
the hotel buildings. So they hired us. The person that hired us loved us, and they was looking forward to us. When we got there, he was so happy and stuff. And I'll get you some help. Bring in the stuff because it was really hard to get way deep into that
Mhm.
complex, and and then some guys were just saying, "Well, what are you doing here?" And it's like, "Well, we're gonna play here." Like these are people that came up to us, on the stage, like, "What are you doing here?"
Are you the gardeners?
Yeah, yeah, like the gardens back there, and so we were like stunned, and then so then the manager came and he said, "We're not gonna play." And he goes, "Don't worry. They gave us the check. They paid. They don't want us to. They just don't want us to play. So and they paid us a lot. I mean, it was like a huge sum of money that they paid us, but they didn't want us to play. That you're going to ruin our party, getting up there
Oh
on
my God.
stage." And so we thought, like, man, these guys got a lot of hate in them, and
Yeah, my God. And then guys like the Premiers and Cannibal the Headhunters, when they in the early 60s, when they toured the South, they couldn't use the white restrooms, they couldn't go into the restaurants, you know, really some hardcore stuff. So yeah, we were
no,
insulated. We were in our own little world there, and it was cool.
but if you went out, it was pretty much always like that, And I remember we played at the Star. You remember the Starwood?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we played there. That was another one of those things. Is like, what are you guys doing
And
here?
what band was that? Was that a 60s or 70s band or what?
I think it was the 70s. Or,
Yeah.
but it was with Bones. It was with Bones, so it must have been at just the very tail end of the Emeralds.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
that's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah.
yeah, so I could see that it's gotten a lot better because in those days you couldn't change. There was no changing anybody like that. It was kind of
Yeah.
almost dangerous. It
Yeah.
was like still dangerous even.
Yeah. And I remember hearing like, well, Pat and Lolly Vegas when they were Pat and Lolly Vasquez. And when they wanted to play the Sunset Strip, they said, you're going to have to change your name or you can't play the strip because of Vasquez.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of venues, a lot of club venues in the 80s, I heard stuff like you could only allow one Latino per group or one black per group. They had all these quotas which you can get away with. Yeah, so racism has always been there. It's still here. So maybe it's more subtle now. Maybe it's
Well,
gotten
it was
better.
more unbridled then.
Yeah,
I mean, it was not
it wasn't
now.
subtle. It wasn't subtle.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't subtle then. Like, get a rope,
Yeah, yeah. I shouldn't laugh, but yeah. So yeah, so that's the little dark side of what went on. But
So I'm happy that all of the new musicians really will never experience that.
yeah,
That
hopefully.
kind of harsh treatment. They won't. That's past that.
The last thing I'd like to talk about is your recording on my records. Um, but before we get to that, I want to understand, how did you wind up starting out as a guitar player in the Emeralds and somehow morphed into a keyboard player? And it probably started with your Vox organ, but talk about that.
Okay, well, it started way when I was younger. A guy in the neighborhood, which I hadn't seen for like, decades, was at uh, Rick Rosa's memorial that they
Uh-huh.
had, that kind of memorial concert. His name's Frank Jurado, or Frank Jurado Jr. And he was there and he hadn't seen me since we were kids. And he lived in my neighborhood. He lived on the next street over, on the same street as Jesse on Record Street, Record Avenue. And so he had a upright piano in his house. And that's how I was still going to grammar school. And this is when, remember that Ferranti and Teicher song by Exodus? Uh, that was like a really popular thing on the radio. So I was trying to pick out that tune on his piano. That's the first time I didn't know how to play piano, but I was like plunking around trying to go, like trying to pick out that melody.
How old are you at this time?
10, like it was something like that, around that age. And so he said, yeah, you could come over anytime you want, just like if you want to, I don't even have to be here. And that was really cool. Like, because I mean, I didn't have a piano, like a big, good piano. So, I was just really interested like that. But then it just like years and years passed. And then in the Emeralds, we wanted to get a keyboard player because we were like doing more different songs and they require different instrumentation. So, uh, that guy, Andy, that I can't remember his last name, but I think it's Perez. He was only with us for a while, but he was kind of. I don't know if it was because he was not that interested or if he was just challenged or something. But I if we were going to get him to do a good thing, I had to learn his part so I could show it to him. So that's how I started. Like on his piano, on his electric Wurlitzer piano, I just go over to Fred's because we had all our stuff set up there all the time, and then I would just like try to learn whatever the part was. At first, just not knowing really much at all about any kind of technique for keyboard. So that's how it started. And then I really liked it. I thought, wow, this is like a great instrument. You could really do a lot of stuff with this. And then those songs started coming out with the Farfisa ones, like 96 Tears and
Willy Bully.
yeah, like all of those, like with that Farfisa sound on them. So we got one like that. We said, okay, well, we'll just pool all our resources and buy one of those organs. So then I totally got into it because I had it all the time then, and so from there, that's how I really started. And then I just kept going on. I just I really liked it a lot. And there would be times like in my whole life where I would just focus on one instrument a lot and then everything else would get put aside. So that's what happened there is guitar and anything else I was doing got shoved aside so I could kind of focus on that.
And you guys had a Vox for a while too, didn't you? Organ? Or was that later?
No, we never owned one, but we borrowed one. And
Okay.
I can't remember where we got that from, but uh, talking about having good organs, we also pooled our resources and bought a brand new B3 and a Leslie, which was a big amount of money to put out in those days.
And a big deal for bands that young to have a Hammond. That was pretty rare.
Yeah, it was like unbelievable. It was like fantastic.
But the next phase of this was at some point you got very interested in Bach and you started learning and you started really getting serious playing the foot pedals and the two keyboards and you got very efficient on the Hammond.
Yeah, yeah, I took like private lessons, like serious private lessons with a really. He's the head of the organ department now at USC. He's like a really great organist. And then he sent me to his teacher, a piano teacher, because he said, you need to like do more technical work on the piano, like that. You should always continue to do that. So I went to his teacher, Gustav Reichert. He was like a great old guy. He was like, I don't know when he must have been born in like the beginning of the 20th century. He's an old guy, and he knew all of that music, and he had all kinds of really great, fantastic player, piano students. And so I went to him, and I stayed with him for a really long time, actually, until he passed away, I think.
Did those teachers show you how to work those bars and how to get all those tones?
No, not really.
How'd you learn that?
Uh, well, probably by first not even knowing anything about that, and then seeing like just something on like a television program or something, or like some like Jimmy Smith or some guy that was a Hammond player, and then seeing him what they were doing with that. First, I was just thinking, what are they doing? They're always like sliding those little deals there. And then I started getting really interested. So then I would go, they used to have like some big Hammond, or not Hammond only, but organ stores. Like a car showroom. They had like these organ showrooms. So I would always go to those places and they'd let me try the stuff. So I would kind of learn and ask questions at those places.
Okay. So I knew about this and I knew how efficient you were on it. And plus I'd played with the Emeralds when you were playing that Hammond and getting fantastic sounds. So now we're going back to the year 1972. when all that stuff was going on with Art Brambilla, where it was Yaki, Tierra, me, the Emeralds, various groups were going into independent studios in Studio City and recording to see, because there was a chance to go with Capitol Records out of that and to, at the very least, get a nice demo. And so at the time, I didn't have a band because I had gone solo in 1971, and I recorded a record with Lou Adler, who is now a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame producer. And on that record, I had the Wrecking Crew, Hal Blaine on drums and Joe Osborne on bass, Mary Clayton and Darlene Love on background vocals. Darlene Love's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Mary Clayton is the one that sang Just a Shot Away with the Rolling Stones. String section, unbelievable situation. I had done the record with Lou Adler in 1971. So in 1972, I was still a solo artist. I didn't have a band. So my former band, they went on, they got a couple of new members, and I went to see them play, and they were really good. They had gotten really tight. So I said, hey, you guys want to back me up on this session I have coming up? And so they said, yes. And so on the first session, it was on drums, Ernie Hernandez Jr., who had been in Mark and the Escorts, the Men from Sound, all my bands, up until we broke up around 1970. And then on bass, Rick Rosas, who was in all my bands also in the 60s. And he went on to play extensively and record with Joe Walsh and Neil Young later on. And John Valenzuela on guitar, great guitar player. And I wanted a keyboard, I wanted an organ. So I asked you if you could come to the session and be on it as well. And on that first session, we recorded the song Lonely. And you played beautiful Hammond organ on it. And your work with those pull bars or whatever you call them was fantastic, because as you were playing, the sound would change, and it was just perfect, beautiful. And that wound up being the B-side of the first Capitol single I did as a solo artist. The A-side was Rock and Roll Queen. But you didn't play on that. Steve Verdugo played Wurlitzer electric piano on that, and he had been playing with Richard and Ernie and John when I saw them. So that was the first session. So then, because I got a record out on Capitol, we had a chance to do a second single. So a few months later, we went in again to the same studio, and you also were invited. And we did my favorite recording I've done, and that's I'm Brown. And the flip side was Living Off the Land, and you played Hammond organ on both of those. And once again, beautiful job, beautiful sounds. I mean, just perfect. And what do you have any memories of those sessions, or is it all gone now?
I just remember they were like fun and really nice vibe, I what I do remember was each time I wasn't really used to doing what I did on those sessions, is just really just try to get in the flow and not worry about anything. Like usually everything, like in the Emeralds, like, we had to like rehearse everything to a T, and, every, everything, every I was dotted and that kind of a thing, and there I just thought, I'm just gonna just get in the flow in the moment and just play. So that's like, so when I finished some of those songs, I thought, wow, that came out really good. Like I surprised myself actually, because I wasn't trying to do that. I was just listening as the seconds were passing and just kind of blending those tones with the, what was going on, in the kind of chordal field.
It was fantastic. The other thing for all you young musicians out there, and this was back in the day when it was to tape, and everybody was playing at the same time, and there was no pitch correction, there was no quantizing. This was real musicians playing at the same time. And on all those tracks I just mentioned, on those 245s, two singles, we were all playing at the same time. No, no corrections. I think I'm Brown was one or two takes. Most of them were one or two takes. and the band was kicking butt. And then there was a couple of overdubs later, like on I'm Brown. I played an acoustic piano, an acoustic piano solo. And then John Valenzuela and I put on dual lead guitars. But generally, all the music was just live. And on the basic tracks, I played Martin acoustic guitar. And the records came out great. I'm proud of them to this day. And like I said, you couldn't have done a better job. And it was just
Thank you.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, they
And
came
then,
out good. All of those songs.
yeah. And so those songs came out on the Capitol singles. And then the next year, I got signed to A&M Records, and John and Ernie and Richard, or Rick Rosas, came with me over there as my backup band. But the label decided they wanted it to be a band, with a name. And so that's how we became Tango. And, but three of those four recordings, two of the three that you played on wound up on the A&M album, because A&M bought the masters from Capitol. And so I'm Brown and Living Off the Land came out on our A&M album in '73, the same performances you did, the same tracks. So that's the history of that. Then a little bit later on, I was doing a lot of recording with my dad, Mark Guerrero, who, among many things that he did, types of songs he wrote, he also did children's records, and he would do these Mexican squirrel records. So they were like the Alvin and the Chipmunks of Mexico, and they were called Las Ardillitas. And so my dad would hire me and my bands to come in and play on a lot of the rock and roll tracks and country music tracks. And I remember bringing you in on one session, and you played the Hammond organ on a song called El Niño Jesus, the baby Jesus. It was just this really cute song with little squirrels singing. And I wrote the music to it, and it was kind of like Let It Be. It had the vibe of Let It Be by the Beatles. And once again, you did a great Hammond part. And then I remember we did another record, probably in '81. It was a single for Mexico, for Las Ardillitas. And I wrote the music, my dad wrote the lyric, and it was called E.T. Ete el Extraterrestre, because the movie E.T. was out. And you came in with your fancy synthesizers and did some really cool sounds and parts. It sounded very outer space.
Oh, I had a Moog synthesizer then. That's
Well, really?
Mini
Wow.
Moog. Yeah, that's what I had.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so we have quite a history apart and together. And
I think we played The Tide is High, like that.
oh, you were on that too?
That Blondie one.
Were you on Whip It? We did Whip It too.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. I'm glad you reminded me. You were on a couple of other songs with my dad's children's records. He was very hip, man. He was already probably in his late 60s or whatever. And he did his own cover version in Spanish of The Tide is High by Blondie and Whip It by Devo. And we went in and we were the band, and you played really nice synthesizer parts on those as well. And those came out really good. If you hear those today, the tracks are spot on.
Because I was playing those songs in the band, and that I was.
Oh, you knew the parts
with joy. That's like, and they were called the Refugees, that band. So that was like when all the punk and new wave stuff was out, and so those are the songs that we were doing in the nighttime. And I think, I don't know if that's what happened. It was like, we just knew them, and then your dad wanted to do them, or did he ask for those songs?
No. He asked me to back him up on them, and the other guys that were in that band, we just had to learn the songs. We weren't playing them. I remember, I think Rick Chavez was the guitar player, the late Rick Chavez, a great guitar player from East L.A. And he passed away about maybe 2 years ago. But man, he came in and he was great. And I'm trying to remember who I had on bass, but and drums. I think Bill Mutter, my friend Bill Mutter.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think I played bass. That's what it was. I played bass. Yeah. And it was great. It was a great little band. And you obviously knew your parts already. So you just, yeah.
And I liked hearing it after that, because we couldn't hear how it was going to sound like the Chipmunks,
Yeah.
but when I heard them later, like the tide is high was just stuck in my mind. I was be walking around like the tide is high. It's just like give me a big kick, boy. That's like
My dad made, he had out so many albums in Mexico of the Arditas. He's known in Mexico, probably more down there for that than anything else. Uh,
do you know I went with your dad
mhm,
and Ben
mhm.
down there because he wanted to put those out again. Those are the songs. So he wanted to go down there to look and see if he could find like kind of pristine LPs so that they could re-record them because they couldn't find the master tapes and stuff.
Well, all you had to do was come to me because I had the albums in
Well,
good shape.
he didn't know, but well, maybe
Yeah.
it was a good reason to go down
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
because
Plus,
we all went to took a little trip down to Revolucion
nice.
and had a great old time.
I'm sure you did. Well, I was saying that he had out, I think they started releasing his Ardita albums in Mexico City, probably in the mid to late 60s. And just about every year there'd be at least one album come out. And there'd almost always be a Christmas album, the Arditas. So today, any gig that I have at a restaurant or whatever, um, the cooks and the waiters and all the ones from Mexico, they
Remember
all
how?
know the Arditas. I
Yeah,
don't care
yeah.
how old they are. You mention it, and oh, it's such a big deal. Oh, las Arditas, because they all generations grew up with those characters, and they have a warm spot for it. So, at
That
my
was
gig
great.
right now, everybody's all excited. Oh, your dad's the one that did the Arditas. All this other stuff is secondary. Yeah, yeah. In Mexico, the other thing he's in Mexico that he's most well known for. He wrote two songs that are standards in Mexico. Nunca Jamás, the beautiful bolero that had been recorded by Trio Los Panchos, Javier Solis, and up here Jose Feliciano did it. And then his other song is Canción Mexicana, which he wrote when he was 17, and the great Lucha Reyes recorded it in probably early 40s or something. And then later Lola Beltran, the big Mexican ranchera divas recorded it. So and every mariachi knows those songs. So that's the big deal of my dad in Mexico. But like I said, I
It
think
is too.
yeah, it's a big deal. But the Art of the Ethos are probably number one to people that they know because a lot of people don't realize he wrote those songs. But then he had another song, La Minifalda de Rimalda, that got pretty popular down there that I played on when I was 15. But yeah, it's a big deal. These are the ethos. And so I wound up writing 11 songs for the Ethos, mostly rock songs. And my dad would write the lyric. So that was always fun. So I'd bring in these kick-ass bands and we would rock. And then you get these little Mexican squirrels on top. And I got to be one of the squirrels. It was wonderful. In the early 80s, I got to make 3 trips to Mexico City with my dad. We do the tracks up here. Then we take the master tape down to Mexico City and record at EMI down there. And
Wow.
yeah, I had great memories. And we do the vocals, and I'd be one of the freaking squirrels. And you have to just sing in slow motion. You slow down the tape,
Yeah, right, right.
and you sing like that. And when you speed it up to speed, the music's right, and blah, 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 and you got chipmunks, squirrels. So it was a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of those two. Those I don't even know if I have those on digital. I gotta digitize them and send you MP3s on those. You probably haven't heard those in a long time, huh? Or do you have them?
I think I must have those
I
like
might have
on
given you a
vinyl or
CD.
something in someplace.
Oh, I see. You
Yeah,
might have the record.
because I didn't. I kept all of that stuff.
Oh, cool. Well, anyway, once again, thank you very much for doing this. And it's going to wind up on eastlareview.com, the audio of it. And it's going to be on my website. And we're going to put it on YouTube. And hopefully some people can watch this and be entertained and maybe learn a thing or two about the East LA music scene of the 60s and beyond.
Cool.
Thank you, man.
Okay.